What's going on, everybody? We are back. This is Corbin, the Serpent Tongue Skipwith.
And this is Ren, the Berserker Marvel. And this is
SAGAS.
the Combat Kid.
The king is back. I'm calling
uh,
this episode "The King is Back."
you're
I'm
too
so
kind,
happy.
bro.
To all the viewers out there, I know I'm hoping you guys enjoyed the three episodes. One was by myself. I don't know if you saw that, but it was covering your last album, and then two cameo features. I know they may have been fun to watch. I hope they are, but it's not the same without Ren. I'm so happy things are back to normal. So it's like a stress lifted. So, all right.
uh,
So, if it's not already obvious by this Pokemon hybrid cover, thanks to because it's Ren's choice. It was Ren's choice the last time we left it, and we are talking about the Blackbird album by Alter Bridge, released in 2007. Um, so, did you want to kick
sick.
things off of your
So
opinions on the album or why you chose it? Or
yeah, so this is a heavy one for me this week because I'd like to dedicate this episode to my just passed father. Um, it's crazy because I anybody who knows or doesn't know, I was on tour with the band and I got this terrible phone call that I had to come home and I got a few days with my dad before he passed. But in and around that time, um, I just felt like I needed to listen to this album and it really, really helped me through it. And there's a lovely story behind this particular album because you know years and years ago when I was a young fella, my dad used to drive me around in the car, and there was one time he was driving me around like anybody else that knows that Mika was my hero for loads of different reasons, and one was because he got me into music and he gave me my love for music, and he'd always be listening to records at the house or in the car. And this one time he had this compilation. I think it was called like uh biggest guitar driving hits or something like that. It was something about like, cruising in your car and listening to rock tunes. And I'd never heard of this band before, and this song came on and it was just incredible. I was like, what is this? It's just magical. And it was Blackbird. And from then on I looked back into the band and I got into the band and I became a big fan of them and stuff. But I hadn't listened to them in a couple of years, a good few years. And during this time, and I could have listened to so many albums that would have helped me during that rough time. And ones that resonated with my father and I, there's countless records. But this one just really stood out and pulled me in, and I was back listening to it this whole time. And that old cliche of, oh, this album helped me through this and whatever. It did. It really did. It was incredible. Like, and that's what I was like. It has to be this album for the choice for this comeback episode slash memorial episode from my dad. So yeah, that's why I chose it anyway, bro.
nah, obviously I never got to meet the guy, but sounds like a legend, and yeah, it's a good time to do this episode. So for me, I discovered Alter Bridge, as I said to your message, professional wrestling, WWE. The wrestler Edge, one of my favorite heels, which for those who don't know means bad guy in wrestling. My favorite bad guy one of was Edge, and he had the song Metalingus by this band, obviously an edited version for the wrestling song, but it's not on this album, but that is one of my favorite theme songs, and that was my bridge into my bridge into Alter Bridge. I didn't mean for that to be funny, but so since then, obviously I've been aware of them, and I didn't realize until I re-listened to this album, thanks to you, that I've actually heard this album before, but it was years ago because I remember the title track, the first track, and it kind of gave me some nostalgia. So this album came out in 2007, and for a bit of reference, albums that came out in the same time were Paradise Lost by Symphony X, which I thought for the longest time was Mike's debut, the bassist to the band, but He started in 2000, so that's my bad. The Apostasy by Behemoth, the United Abominations Megadeth, Silent Waters by Amorphous, Systematic Chaos Dream Theater, In Sorte Diaboli Dimmu Borgia, great album, and the classic album Venus Doom by him. So we have a lot of interesting, I think a lot of highs and a lot of lows for different bands in their careers. I mean, that Megadeth album, I would consider one of their worst. I didn't really care about that album, but still Venus Doom and the Dimmu Borgia one, classics in there. So it was an interesting year for metal, especially, and then this is their second album. So for this, I think it was a very interesting choice of an album because it's so rarely. I mean, back then, and it even counts today. How often do you hear a band that's just pure clean vocals? You don't hear that much anymore. You hear the screamo blueprint, which is half screaming, half singing. Bands like Escape the Fate, Fall in Reverse, Of Mice and Men, Sleeping with Sirens, who do both. But then just to hear just clean with a bit of metal, alternative metal behind it, you don't really hear that anymore. Like purely clean, and so it was really refreshing to listen to something that was just like clean vocals because, like I said, you don't really hear that much anymore, and especially artists who can singers who could actually sing like properly sing. So it's like instead of just like thrash metal bands where they kind of shout or kind of grungely scream like Slayer. So it was. I think for me, this was a refreshing album to review because, like I said, you don't often hear too many clean style the whole way through. So yeah, it was a very refreshing thing to hear the little voice of Miles Kennedy.
Yeah, man. I could talk about Miles' vocals for forever. Like he's done incredible side project work, if you call a side project, because he was singing with Slash for quite some time, and that was while still going strong with Alter Bridge. It's no mere feat. And then Tremonti went solo as well, but they seem to give as much attention and love to both of their creative sides of music. Um, but this album was a strange one, yeah, because all those albums that came out at that time were there's a lot of really top-notch albums, and this still sold, I think, 227,000 copies. And that was in the first year, I think. I'm not entirely sure about my facts here, but it's just it was a very positively recepted album at first. But I think as time's gone on, people even like it even more and appreciate what it was because they still had the small stigma of where the original members came from of this band. They were originally from Creed. So you got the rhythm section and the guitar player are the three, musicians of Creed. And Creed loved them or hate them. Scott was a funny character to like, an easy character to dislike, but the boys were phenomenal musicians. And it's funny, I always listened to that band and I loved their sound, but I didn't really like Scott's vocals. And the lyric content and everything about them was just it was a little cheesy and they got a lot of stick for it. I think they were like the original Nickelback, for like hated band. And what you call it? So I think when they transitioned over at 2004 and they literally nailed it on the head, getting somebody completely different than Scott and somebody that had the presence of pretty much, I mean, as a front man, Miles has everything that you could possibly want in a front man. He's a great songwriter, he's a great arranger, he's a super cool presence on stage. He's actually a really good guitar player as well. People overlook it because he's in a band with Mark Tremonti, but he's actually an excellent guitar player. And he can literally his vocals soar, man. He can go anywhere he wants, and it's just beautiful, lyrical way of singing. Um, but yeah, so Scott Phillips, I think, is the drummer, and I forget the bass player's second name is Marshall. Oh, Brian Marshall. I always forget Brian, but I never forget Marshall. Um, but yeah, like they're just such a great band, you know. And this was their, to me, this was their best album. But at the time, it had didn't get the success. I think the next one and the one after, I think with Alter Bridge 3, I think really because I think that track you're on about or Isolation
Metalingus.
was, yeah, Metalingus. Actually that's their highest played track on Spotify, funny
I
enough.
wonder
So it must
why.
have, yeah, it must have something to do with the Edge. But funny, growing up as a kid, I did like Edge as a wrestler as well. Funny, but yeah, so man, this album it done really well in a hindsight kind of way, or you know, uh, but I like I said, it's a really special album for me as well. So I'm gonna try and not talk too soppy about it. I'm gonna try and talk, uh, my usual kind of shy talk about it. The producer on this album in particular really stands out for me because you can hear an album that's not just a band going into a studio and it being recorded and sent off to another mixer or master without any real depth or thought into it. You man, Michael Basket is the engineer on this album. They call him Elvis as well, which super cool. Um, which my mom and dad named me originally off Elvis's middle name. So we won't go into that too much detail, but there's a connection there. So I appreciate Elvis and anything to do with Elvis. But the American producer, uh, Michael Basket, recorded with so many amazing artists like Tremonti, as we know, obviously, Alter Bridge, Chevelle, who's a really cool three-piece riffage band. Um, Slash, for instance, I think I can't not show this. I keep mentioning Slash. I'm gonna have to say I have a Slash signature model, the affordable one sitting here beside me. And while I'm at that amazing show, I have the Mark Tremonti signature here beside me on this side. So I was just sitting here with these two guitars sitting either side of me, thinking, Jesus, Miles Kennedy is so man, isn't he? Like he's just surrounded himself with just incredibly talented people. Being a super incredibly talented man himself, he belongs to be there. But yeah, there's so much talent on this album, like from the producing to the members to the whole team. It's just incredible. Like,
What's really weird. So like, I, I'm not sure what has this effect on me, but whenever I think of the band Creed, whenever I think of the band Creed, my mind instantly goes to Creedence Clearwater Revival. I don't know why. Like my mind just kind of
yeah,
fills in the gap of a better band, and I'm just like, and then I automatically think of them because they're a great country rock band.
yeah,
And then what's funny is whenever I think about Miles Kennedy, I don't know why my brain does this. It's pretty retarded, but whenever I think of Miles Kennedy, I think of a combination of Miles Davis and the Dead Kennedys, and I'm like,
yeah.
Miles Kennedy. I don't
Yeah,
know why. But interesting fact about the producer of this album, he also, to my knowledge, has produced every single Fallen in Reverse album.
right.
Yeah, I found that out because I'm a big fan of Fallen in Reverse, so it's like, what the hell? Um, you know, I will say this. So, as much look, I do love the band, and I grew up listening to Metalingus pretty much for every week for like 10 years. So like his Edge was on all the time. So I've got that song imprinted in my head. And there's so many amazing tracks on this album. The one thing I will say though, and look, this isn't a completely negative thing because I finally come to realize as I'm getting older to just kind of step off my high horse a little bit and just kind of just like take things into a new perspective. Now, the thing I will say, I'll say what I mean first before I continue, is I feel like Miles is one of those singers that, in a way, in my opinion, no one has to agree with me, but I feel like he relies too much on his build up power octave. They're saying that like dun 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 dun. It's the same octave he hits, and it's a beautiful octave. It sounds amazing. He can't do it bad. It's just I feel like in every song and like every at the end of every few sentences he's doing that note, and I'm like it kind of sounds a little bit one dimensional. As beautiful as it is, it sounds a little bit one dimensional to me. But then I thought about it, and I'm like, there are times when I'm when I set up the Bluetooth speaker when I'm having a shower, or when I'm like, just cleaning the house or doing stuff like that. And I guess those are the times when I'm doing just kind of mind shut stuff that this kind of style works, because you want that kind of, you don't have to think about it. You don't need all the you don't need all, like all the complex intricacies. You just need a solid album. And for those situations, walking my dog or cleaning or having a shower, these kind of albums really work, because they're not simple, but they're kind of one dimensional, but they're badass. They're metal, and it's a good time for for little tasks like that. This isn't the kind of album if I had to like sit and ponder, that I would like listen to if I was in the kind of mood. So I do have to give that one down to the band. But I mean, it's not like Miles Kennedy ever does that note wrong. It's just, you know when I overthink it, like for example this week, because I had to study it, I kind of noticed it a lot more than I wanted to. And I was just in like every song, every few lines. And like I said, it's kind of like it's kind of like somebody feeding you your favorite food every hour. It's like, I mean, you're never gonna hate it. It's your favorite food. You'll never get sick of it. But at the same time, you're like, all right, it what's next? What else is there kind of thing? But like, yeah, so it's I guess it's kind of a harsh thing to say about Miles, but it doesn't take away from the fact that he is an incredible singer in his own right. He does have some amazing notes. It's just that one specific octave, which I think if you're an Alter Bridge fan, you know what I'm talking about. I can't sing, so I'm not even going to attempt to do it again. But it's just like everyone knows that note that he hits, that power note that he does in like almost in literally every song. Um, yeah, to me, it would be better. I think going forward, I'd probably be more of a Alter Bridge playlist kind of guy than an album. Normally, I am an album guy, but because of the one dimensionalness of the singing, I don't know how often I can listen to a whole album, but it doesn't take away from the instrumentation, it doesn't take away from the production, and it doesn't take away from the singing either. It's just my personal, I guess, preference and my own little stuff I've noticed. And I guess you could write it off as me studying this album, so I pick up on stuff more than if I was listening to it carefree. But yeah, that's just my little criticisms, I guess.
Well, 100%. I mean, being an Alter Bridge fan, and I wouldn't be the biggest Alter Bridge fan out there, but I did go to see them playing live, for example, and I thought they were the best live band I had ever seen. I saw them in I think it was 2017 in this theater called the Olympia Theater in Dublin. And it's a beautiful big theater, and I got seats up in the nosebleeds. Like I was way at the top, and anybody who's ever been there, when you're at the very top, it's like 4 or 5 flights up, but it's a theater. You kind of feel like you're looking down, like you're tilted towards. It's a really crazy experience to watch a band. And I just thought they were absolutely like crisp, like absolutely beautiful, but not like, directly mimicking the record. You could hear that there was these subtle nuances and stuff that they just embellished a little bit or added few little sprinkles. Overall as a band, I think they're very talented people, but they play to their strengths. They're real musicians. This, and what I mean by a real musician is somebody that plays by feel. Everybody in this band, and you can hear it on the record, and then when you see them live, they play by feel. And Miles the same with his vocals. He has a certain thing he goes for, and he does it well. He doesn't try and jump out of that too much. You hear some artists, especially the guys that do the higher register stuff, they then try and do like the heavy vocals, and it doesn't work. Miles every now and then will put a tiny bit of gravel on a bit of vocals, but that's about it. He does have a nice, really smooth, a lower register. It's not, I wouldn't call it deep, but it's when they're playing like a slow track. He doesn't have to soar as much, and he has this like smooth, level vocal, and he's able to put a bit of harshness in it. But where they really have a strength here is in Mark Tremonti's vocals, because he doesn't use it as much as obviously when he's doing his Tremonti solo stuff, he's the main singer. But it's when you go back to listen to the tracks, then you realize, oh, that was Mark doing that bit, you know. And there's a couple of tracks in this album where there's like this question answer, or you know, they're harmonizing, and they just, their two voices sit so perfectly. And the same goes for their guitar playing. The guitar playing of the two boys just sits perfectly. It's like they're like the perfect combination. I kind of look at them as a bit of a uh Paul McCartney, John Lennon vibe. Like there's something about them. They just sit really well. They're great on their own, but when they come together, they're just, you know, really, really good. But no, I know a lot of people are gonna say, what the hell is he talking about? You know, the best live band he's seen. Like I swear, man, up at that point, the best live band the most enjoyable show I'd seen was a Deftones show. So like, but now I'm like, maybe Hate Invader or up on the tour just gone. Maybe they were as good as Alter Bridge, because like for me, I look at a live show differently than most people. You know, it's it's how well it's played, how well it's performed, but then it's just the overall energy of the band as well. Like, and these guys are absolutely excellent. Like, um, dual vocals, dual guitars. I'm down.
Well, yeah, and what's really cool I've noticed, and I guess this green screen image was kind of counterintuitive for this part, but the album cover, the real one.
Yeah.
I said this before. This is a Pokemon hybrid. I thought it was sick. But the album cover, which is a smoky background with a normal bird, and Alter Bridge with Blackbird on it at the bottom. It kind of really I don't really know how to really describe why, but the album cover really resembles like the late 2000s into the 2010s era. I don't like, unless you've lived through that. I guess it's kind of hard to explain that, but it has like a real like rough around the edges type, like you got the real fancy red, like kind of like what Bullet for My Valentine would do, like with the font, and then you have like some majestic, not as majestic as this, but majestic crow thing coming out, and then it's just like, and then you got some like can't the background, the outer background, um, behind the animal kind of looks like the a more rough around the edges cover of Tool Anima. I don't know if you've seen that album cover, but it's just like a sketchy, like dark blue, like roughly drawn kind of plain background. It kind of reminds me of that. So it's just really resembling the time of the album cover to me, and which is, I mean, it was just before the 2010s, so late. So this album came out similar time as like Suicide Silence, the Mitch Lucker era, Bullet for My Valentine, stuff like that, and obviously very different styles between the three, but the artwork, is very mystic. It's very engaging, and it's very, I think, very resemblant of the time that this album came out. And if you don't believe me, guys, just go Google metal albums from like 2005 to 9, and they all have like very, I guess, mysteriously cryptic but kind of majestically looking album covers. I don't really know how to describe it, but if you're from that era and you remember that era, you understand what I mean. And if you don't, go Google it. But yeah, it's a pretty cool album cover.
Yeah, I totally get what you're saying as well. It was like this effect that you used to use around that time. It was like a grunge post effect kind of thing. It was like this, like a set visual of like, just get your image and then stick this, like, vagrant sort of grungy, sketchy, scratchy stuff around the edges. And I used to use that all the time. So yeah, that's the real one there. I think I prefer the Pokemon one now that I see it again. But I have always liked this album cover, like, and it's cool that you picked up on the times, because it was very prevalent of the times. It's kind of like saying, because the early 2000s was, let me see, like the 90s had something to say, off the back of the 80s. The early 2000s was kind of a bit of a lost time musically as well. There was a lot of, what you'd almost call it futuristic trying to be futuristic sounds coming out, and but they wanted to keep that the grit, you know. So it was this weird kind of dynamic that people like musically it was funny, and I really cut my teeth in my music around this time. So it really it was a bizarre time. Like it, lots to not much to say, but a lot of talking. If that makes any sense to anybody.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's really it's just interesting. But no, I really like it. I think Mark Tremonti has quite a few people in the crew that's family members of him. I think they're it's not their manager, it's somebody anyway. Somebody on their A&R is it's either a brother or some relation to Mark Tremonti. And the guy who made this artwork is I think it might be some relation to Mark Tremonti as well. Not 100%, but I'm almost certain. So there you go. We'll ask Mark next time we see him.
You know, I saw this I saw this post ages ago, and like I keep going back to it because it's so true. Someone said that the 2000s was like a lawless wasteland. it unless you lived through it, you don't really know, but it really was. It just like had the weirdest shit, and like musically it was all over the place. New metal fucking came was most prominent 1999 to 2000s. It was a very weird time, and a whole different bunch of styles and a bunch of different art. It was just a crazy time, and who they even had the I don't know if you remember this, or I don't even know if you had this in Ireland, but over here they had the different colored ketchup tomato sauce. We had like it was like purple and yellow, it was blue, and it was crazy. Like I remember as a kid loving it. Mum bought it, and I was like, "Oh shit, it's like Willy Wonka." It was fucking crazy. And then obviously it got discontinued because it probably had chemicals to give you cancer or something.
Yeah,
But yeah, but nah, it's pretty crazy. Fucking, I remember that time so well. Um,
weird.
but yeah, no, it's pretty crazy because it's initially 13 tracks, and then there's a bonus track. Um, the bonus track is "We Don't Care at All," which is funny because we were just talking about how the 90s had something to say without saying nothing at all, and
Ah.
then the bonus track is "We Don't Care at All." That's pretty funny. Um, that's quite ironic, but
Yeah.
yeah, no, like as soon as like I said, as soon as I hit that um first track ties that bind, like I got all this nostalgia back because I remember how much I love that song, and it's such a great opener. It has like an amazing chorus. It reminds me. Well, I guess they were first, so I guess their style kind of this kind of chorus, especially on that first song, reminds me a lot of like what a Memphis Mayfire chorus would sound like very melodic, very although obviously Miles is a deeper vocals, but very empowering kind of vocal performances. And the chorus is just out of this world. Like it's one of those choruses you kind of look forward to in a song, which I mean, I guess normally you should look forward to the chorus because that repeats the most. But it's these special kind of songs where you actually like look forward to it, and because you know that power's coming, you know that melodic, you know, just that heaviness, especially in this case with Miles's gravelly kind of voice. It's really a treat to just sit back, and when he hits it on the songs where he hits it out of the park, I mean, they really hit it out of the park. I mean, songs like, you know, songs like what song was it? Like Brand New Start, you know, or Coming Home. Songs like that, it's just like the vocal performance is just like hit you right in your wherever your heart is. For somewhere. Um and it's fucking sick. But yeah, no, like I said, as soon as I heard that first track, I was like, oh yep, flashback. I've heard this album before, and I remember it being fucking sick. So yeah, this album was like a big ball of nostalgia for me.
Yeah, man, Ties the Bind is such a killer. That riff at the start, like the first thing you know is just like a big killer riff. It's like mad tempo, like it's like energy, man. It's just a really great song to start off an album that overall has quite a lot of melancholic kind of tendencies. It's a ball of contradictions, this album, because there's a lot of dark and deep lyric content, and the music sometimes doesn't match up with what's being said. But I think that's a really nice, refreshing take on talking about something sad, something deep, or something you know like one of the tracks is about a soldier coming back from Iraq, one by one, and then the track before that was about the loss of a close friend to a terminal illness, Blackbird, which is the song that resonates with me the most on the album. But then in between all that, you got these like wicked heavy detuned riffs with like Zach Wild pinches and big killer bitch and wah solos, and it's just a crazy mix of genres. Like for years I've been trying to put a label on this band, and I still to this day can't really. You know, they're hard rock in one sense. There's bluesy influences, especially with Miles's vocal approach and guitar style. Um, but then you've got, Mark Tremonti has just this gift for writing, pulling these mammoth riffs out of the air. Like I don't know what it is about him. Like he's just one of the best riff writers. And he's a formidable guitar player, and a lot of people respect and admire him. But I still think he's underrated, even to this day. Even though he has all the signature guitars and signature amps now, he has a PRS. Is it PRS? Who makes a signature amp? I can't. I think it might be. Anyway, it's an incredible amp. I got to just plug in one time. It's an absolute monster. But so you've got everything on this album from Ties to Bind to Come to Life is the second track, and that's where you start to hear the big chunky riffs that it's just so hoppy, like it's a headbanger. You can just, you know, headbang to a lot of this album, or you can sit down and cry, or you can sit down, you can get inspired, or you can get angry, or it's an overall, I think it's a perfect album. Like it's just beautifully executed, and for it being their second album, I think it's absolutely incredible. Like Buried Alive is another one of those just huge anthemic tracks, like the what you were saying about Miles's vocals. When he nails it, man, he nails it. He soars like a blackbird, man. He's away, and it's making those huge anthemic choruses. Like it's funny you mention Memphis Mayfire, because they do that in spades as well. Like that's a real art form. That's you know, there's a difference between writing like a banger for the radio, like a hit track or something, and writing just an anthem, that just resonates, because there's a lot more depth in it being an anthem than being just a catchy song. This is like just power. The tracks these boys write is just powerful, reflective. Like you can tell that Miles sings from the heart. As you said, wherever it is, it comes
Yeah.
from. It's coming from a real place, man. These guys are writing from a real place. They're musicians for the right reasons, and it totally shows. Still to this day, but on this album in particular.
Oh. Yeah, before we go on to the advocate thing, two things I want to say. Number one, I never really found it that hard to kind of label Alter Bridge. To me they've always just been alternative metal. I don't really know what else to call them. Alternative metal has always been my label for them. I'm not saying I'm right, but that's what I've always called them. And number two, a little bit of a side note story. It reminded me because we're talking about Memphis. When I interviewed Maddie, I said to him, it was funny because I said to him, I'm like, oh, your vocal, the way you do your vocals, you remind me of a reincarnation of Freddie Mercury. And like, and he's like, holy shit! Like he was blown away. He's like, oh fuck. He's like, I don't know if I would say that, but thank you so much. Like, I don't know. I've always thought that about him, and I mean, compared to anyone else, I guess, like, and yeah, he was like, what the fuck? Like, he couldn't believe it. Which, I mean, I guess it is quite a bit to hear from someone, but yeah, it reminded me of that because I did it, yeah, when I talked to him that one time. Um, all right, so now it's time for our classic segment, and now that I have loyalty free sounds, Dad. I could. I. Oh yeah. Did you want to bring something
No,
up?
I was reaching over for something, but I don't know. I think I've unplugged it. No, it's
All right.
unplugged. Sorry.
Well, it's time for. I'll
I was
insert. Oh yes.
I was gonna go wow. It was meant to be plugged in, but I've
All right.
unplugged the
Hang on. Hang
plug.
on. Keep that there. We'll try it again. All right.
Right.
Three, two, one. It's time for.
The devil's advocate. Wow, wow,
Yeah.
wow. I didn't tune on it.
Nice. Nice. All right. Cool. So little air guitar. So I'll start off with my favorite track. I mean, to me, it's always been ties that bind. Uh, it's the song I remember most about. It's a song I've always fallen in love with since I heard it years ago. It it didn't lose any of its traction this time around. Great track, as I already said, amazing chorus. Overall, just an amazing track. Um, yeah, ties that bind. Perfect intro for the album. Now, for my least favorite, I would have to say the song, and only because I just find it a little bit lackluster. I find it a little bit boring. Like, I mean, boring in the sense that I feel like Miles could have done more. Like, the instrumentals are fine, whatever. You know, they do their jobs well. It's just I find vocally that Miles Davis kind of sounded a bit flat. More so, just yeah, it was just to me a bit of a boring track. And that song was buried alive. Compared to the other album, I just felt like it just fell flat for me personally, for my ears. It wasn't as explosive as say "Ties That Bind" or the other songs I mentioned. You know, it's just I don't know. The amount of times I re-listened to this album, that song just kind of fell on deaf ears for me. So yeah, those are my two favorites. Favorite and least favorite.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Ties the Bind is just a killer track. You know, we spoke about that a minute ago. Absolutely love it. Um, it was one of the first full-on heavy tracks of theirs that I heard that was just like a ballsy tune. Actually, I'm just after remembering. I don't know what episode it was, but we were chatting about the movie Rockstar, and I said that Miles Kennedy starred in it just for like one scene, I think it was. I love that movie. It's really cheesy, but I love how uh, you know, the guy singing on stage, and then he pulls up Mark Wahlberg, Marky Mark, and he replaces him, and then you know the roles reverse, and then Marky Mark or Mark Wahlberg's on stage, and he pulls up this kid from the audience, and it's only like it was never made known around. I just recognized his face watching it back a couple of years ago. I was like, that's fucking Miles Kennedy. And he's jumping up on the stage and all the get up and stuff, and he just takes over the role. I just remember we mentioned that. I don't know why we mentioned that before in the podcast, but I just thought, yeah. So for my, I don't really have a least favorite track in this album because um, I would have had until it started to become, you know, a bit special to me. But I did always think "Watch Over You" was always a track that I'd skip over because I didn't really get it, but now I do, you
Yeah,
know, and now I think it's a really special song, and you know, I don't know, it's just beautiful, and it's something that I needed to hear right now. It's really weird. Um, Rise Today is is was the first single off this album, as far as I remember, and that's just one of those big anthemic tunes. There's nothing else really to it. There's not a huge amount of depth to it. Um, I don't know. I can't. I'm always shit at this part of the game anyway. Like, coming home was another contender. Right, sure. I'll talk about my favorite anyway because it'll probably take me longer. Blackbird obviously is my favorite track on this album. Um, because like I said at the start of this is what inspired this, and this is why I'm still listening to this album because my dad inadvertently got me into this band. Um, you know, it's 7 minutes of 58 seconds of just pure magic. It's absolutely beautifully written, beautifully orchestrated. It's like I said, it was about Miles Kennedy's friend that was terminally ill while they were recording the song, and the friend died just as they were about to finish. Um, you know, I just have been gravitated, just pulled in to this song lately, and it's just a really, really nice, comforting song that I can really resonate with. So aside from the fact that it's a incredibly written and recorded song. It's special to me now. Um, that's I'll just leave that one there. I won't go too into that one. It's beautiful. It's there like Stairway to Heaven, if I will. People are like, "What? Fuck you! You're really talking about?" Yeah, my least favorite song, White Knuckles, was another sick tune that I really love because it is what it is. It is what it says on the tin. It's called White Knuckles. The chorus is "Hold on for your life," you know, because only the strong survive. It's like White Knuckle Ride, right? So that's a really cool song, but it was only a contender for my favorite. I'll probably say my least favorite is Break Me Down. And it's got a lovely octave slidey chord progression thing, and it's quite an uplifting, empowering song. But that's pretty much all to it. It doesn't have the depth as the rest of the songs in this album that have just layers and layers of depth and beauty and all those things nice. There you go.
Well, you heard it here first, folks. Ren's one of Ren's favorite songs, White Knuckles, is amazing because it is what it is. Have you ever heard a more detailed philosophical explanation than because it is what it is? That's
My
fantastic.
missus, wow, Kathy's gonna give out to me if she hears this because she hates that saying, that phrase. It is what it is.
It is what it is. Um, I'm gonna I'm gonna say this, and this is yeah, fuck it, I'll just say it. What did the caveman construction worker say to the other caveman construction worker?
I don't.
Alter bridge.
Uh,
I thought that was funny. Um, to all you crickets watching at home that didn't laugh at all. No. So that was yeah. The king is back, as I said earlier. Fucking so happy that that it's because really as content as I was to release episodes and honestly, it was first of all it was a mutual agreement to keep it running without you for a bit. So to it like if there's any fans like fuck you, you just released it without run. It was a mutual thing, and had it have been longer, obviously it would have been longer. I would have found a way. Um, but I'm just happy that it's back the way it is. Next week will be a special episode. We'll have, if all things go as planned, we'll have featured guest Tom Hazard, legendary in the metal community, and we'll be talking about the debut, I'm pretty sure, album by Black Flag, Damaged, which is interesting because I've wanted to show you this album for a while. I was meant to cover this album with the drummer from Remember and the Berserkers, Mr. Motorface. But he had other plans. He had last minute plans come up, which is fine. So it almost feels destiny of this to talk about this album when you've returned and with Tom Hazard, who would have been in the business when this album probably came out. So, no, I'm excited to talk about the album. I've wanted to talk about it for a while, and who better to do it with than the king himself and Tom Hazard? So it's gonna be a good week.
yeah,
Um,
bro. You did so
and
well. You did so well.
yeah, it's gonna be good. And last minute words. In case you've listened to this all the way to the end, and I've been wanting to say this for a while, and I can only the Serpentine can say this. If you're even listening towards the end this far in, Harry, your opinion on Led Zeppelin is wrong. Led Zeppelin are the fucking best. Love and respect, Harry. Amazing show. um, yeah. So that was our SAGAS podcast, and As we always say here, same time, same place, awesome.
Or